All right, so today we're going to talk about fasteners, nuts and bolts, and the sizing of them. You go to the parts store and you go through the hardware aisle. It can be pretty intimidating. You got different bins and containers and grades and colors and sizes. Which one do you need? Well, let's talk some of the basic stuff today. Some of the basic stuff that anybody can use about fasteners. All right. Well, we've got, for example, I got a handful of bolts here, nuts and bolts, and some screws as well. All right. This fastener here, all right, I'll take this fastener here and check it out. I look at the head of this bolt right here. It's a 6-point bolt, all right, a hex 6-point. It also has 6 dashes on the head of that bolt right there. So I look at that immediately and I can tell, well, that's a standard bolt. In other words, you got standard and metric as your options. Okay, standard, the size of this is going to be standard. So we're talking a 1/4 inch, 3/8, 7/16, 1/2 inch, those types of numbers right there. Now, so it's a standard bolt. All right. Well, what about what size, what diameter is that bolt right there? The threads of those. Well, I can take a quick measurement with some calipers here, some dial calipers, real quick, and it shows 371. So that's a touch under 3/8, which would be 375. And so I can say, well, that's a 3/8 bolt. Now, 3/8, that's good. We got the diameter, but what about the thread pitch, the angle of the threads? You have coarse that are a little bit further apart, and fine thread that's a little bit closer together. So we need to know what the thread pitch is. All right. Well, one way to do it is with this thread pitch gauge. This is a standard or SAE thread pitch gauge. And inside, you open it up, it's got all these little fingers or examples of different thread sizes. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to find one that matches this bolt right here, and then it corresponds to the number on that thread pitch gauge. So I'm going to pull out a one that says 16 on it. And what you do is you take the bolt and you lay the thread pitch gauge right there in the threads, and it should, if it matches up, well, then that tells you what your thread pitch is. So this is a 3/8 by 16 thread pitch right there. Okay, you got the diameter and the amount of threads in that given area there. So this is a 16, matches up with a 16. All right, 3/8 by 16. Now, what if we had another 3/8 bolt, but this one's fine thread? Notice how much closer those threads are. So it's not 16. We could take the 16. It does not line up there, all right, because that's the coarse one. Well, the fine thread, let's find another example here on our thread pitch gauge. Okay, this one is a 24, and you can see how that lines up perfectly right there. So that's an example of a 3/8 fine thread, 3/8 coarse thread. This one's 3/8 24. This one's 3/8 16. So you need that information when you go to buy hardware to get matching nuts for the bolts. And of course, you can get them in different lengths. You could measure the length. The length is always measured from underneath the head to the end of the bolt right there. So this particular one, it comes in right at 1 inch 250 thousandths. So it's 1.25 inch length on that bolt right there. Okay. Another thing, so that was standard. Then you've got metric bolts. This one on the outside, it looks pretty similar to the 3/8 16, or excuse me, the 24. But if you look at the head of it real quick, we've got 8.8 on the bottom of that bolt. So that 8.8, that tells me that that's a metric fastener. All right, a metric fastener. So the diameter is going to be different. So if I were just to measure these two diameters, this particular one here, let's go with the standard measurement or in decimals. All right, so that one measures 388 thousandths thick. And then this one here, like we've done it earlier, is 371, okay? And typically they're a touch under their fractional measurement there. So that, even though it looks pretty close, it's not the same, it's different. And if you try to get hardware for that, or if you've got the nut for this one, it might slide on this one, but it's actually not engaging correctly. So we take that, we can get a measurement there. Now these also, you can get measurements for standard and metric on your calipers there to get your different readings. But that's one right there. We know right on the head of that, that's metric, okay? So we're gonna stay to our metric stuff, all right? And then same thing there, if we had a thread pitch gauge that was for metric, we can match that up and determine what the thread pitch on that one is. Those options are like 1, 1.5, 1.75, 2.0 on the thread pitches there. The other thing is the head of the bolt, okay? The head of the bolt. You got your traditional 6-point, okay, that would match your hex or 6-point sockets. There's also some 12 points out there, pretty common automotive stuff. The 12-point would require a 12-point socket to engage that. Now, you wouldn't want to take that 12-point socket and use it on your 6-point bolt. Now, it'll work, but you increase your chances of rounding off the edges there because there's less contact on the flats and more on the corners, right? So you can use it, but you got to be careful that you not round those off if you're using that 12-point on a 6-point, okay? They also have some like Allen heads like that, some button heads as well. So it just depends on your application, what works best. Another thing is you hear the term a bolt versus a screw, right? So technically, a screw would be one like this. This is like a drywall screw. It's got a Phillips head to it, a point on one end. The screw is not designed to have a nut or a fastener on the backside. It goes into wood, drywall, with no type of nut on the backside to hold it there. Versus a bolt, requires threads that it goes into or a nut to fasten and hold those together there. All right, so there's your tech tip for the week.